Well, my next guest is the co-CEO of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, Alex Rivchin, who is wrapping up a week-long solidarity mission to Israel. He has visited some of the sites of the October 7 massacre, including the Nova Festival, where 364 civilians lost their lives to Hamas's brutality. He also met with the family members of those who were murdered, including the sister of Galit Carbone, the Australian grandmother who was murdered. And Alex Rivchin joins me now from Yafo in Israel. Alex, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us from Israel this evening. Firstly, I do want to speak to you, of course, about your experiences over there, but I just want to start with the news today that Australia will reinstate funding to UNRWA despite allegations staff members participated in the October 7 massacre. What's your reaction to the news?
Look, I think this is an appalling decision, and I would strongly urge the government to reconsider it. We've seen UNRWA for a long time mired in corruption, in bias. It's been part of the problem and part of the cause of the conflict for a long, long time. But what we saw on October 7 crossed into really uncharted territory, something which we would never imagine a UN agency would do. And that is seeing their workers, their employees, paid by taxpayers, including from Australia, actually participating in the atrocities of October 7. We've seen audio and video footage of UNRWA employees bragging about kidnapping Israeli women on that day. And those who defend UNRWA would say it's just a couple of bad eggs, but that organisation is rotten to its core. The levels of complicity with Hamas in terms of using its facilities to store weapons, financing, all these sorts of entanglements are so deep that there has to be another way to provide aid to the Palestinians. And we are firmly in support of maximum aid getting to Palestinian civilians. No one wants to see needless suffering, malnutrition and the like. But there have to be other ways of doing this. We've seen the world in war zones and in places of natural disaster have ad hoc measures in place to provide relief to where it needs to go. It can't go through an organisation like UNRWA. It simply can't.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, it's unacceptable that taxpayer dollars are going here, and yet there hasn't even been an investigation report handed down into what has allegedly occurred. So we will stay tuned on that. Now, I want to talk to you about your week-long solidarity mission to Israel. Tell us a bit about your experiences there.
Well, before coming to Israel, I was in New York, where I had a meeting with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, to convey the unity of the Jewish world and the disappointment that we feel about the silence of the UN, of UN women in the face of horrific crimes committed against women in Israel, hack rape, mutilation, absolute horrors. And it took months and months for the UN to even speak on the matter. Their statements throughout have been pretty poor and have really lent credibility to Hamas's campaign. It's been deeply disappointing. And we've conveyed this very firmly to the Secretary General, and also the primacy of the hostage issue. This is the issue that exercises the Jewish world today. We are unified and determined to ensure the hostages are the 130 people who remain in Hamas captivity in absolutely abject, dire conditions, that they are released unconditionally and without delay. And from there, I had to come to Israel to convey on behalf of the Australian Jewish community the support, the love that we feel for our aching brethren here in this country. This country has suffered such a blow to its confidence. It has suffered such things which really the Jewish world thought would never happen again. And to be able to sit with soldiers who had emerged from combat minutes before and convey my support, the support of the Jewish community for their righteous battle to defeat Hamas terrorism, to speak to survivors of the massacres, the family members, including, as you showed there in that compilation, the sister of an Australian woman who was massacred in the village of Be'eri. I came to show solidarity and to give some sort of strength to the people, but in fact, they've given strength to me, demonstrating their dignity, their courage, their humility. It's given me great confidence for the fight against global anti-Semitism.
And just on that, we've just seen those photos of you meeting with loved ones, with family members who've lost loved ones, including the sister of Galit Carbone, the Australian grandmother who was murdered. What did they tell you, and how are they doing after what's been just such an awful, awful few months?
They're trying to busy themselves really with rebuilding their lives, rebuilding the villages, the Kibbutz that were absolutely ravaged. They're trying to do something for their country and for their people. They're also focused on the struggle to have the hostages released. So they're trying to busy themselves with things and move forward. And that's what this country, that's what the Jewish people have always done throughout our history. We've suffered these sickening atrocities, we've born, but we've moved forward and we've rebuilt. And that's what these people will do. This was a mission by animals to violate human beings. That's all this was. It served no political purpose. It served no military imperative whatsoever. It was about destroying and violating and maiming. And it's something which we as a people will never forget.
No, absolutely not. You can never forget that. Alex Rivchin, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us from Israel this evening.
Thank you so much.